One single Senate seat in Maine might just decide the future of the American government.
Yeah, it sounds like a tagline for a political thriller, right?
Uh,
But mathematically and strategically, we are looking at a scenario where the entire balance of power in Washington hangs on this one incredibly messy local race.
Welcome to the deep dive. Today we are exploring a real-time crisis unfolding in the 2026 election cycle. But, before we get into the granular details in Maine, we have to start with the paradox here.
Oh, the paradox is wild.
It really is. Like, why is a major political party fighting tooth and nail to elect a man they are simultaneously trying to destroy?
Well, to understand that desperation, you really have to zoom out. You have to look at the pressure cooker the country is in right now. The national backdrop is driving every single decision in this race.
Exactly. Just look at the reality of June 2026. I mean, we recently came out of a 41-day government shutdown.
Which is just unprecedented gridlock.
Yeah, totally unprecedented. We had 42 million Americans facing the real threat of losing their food assistance. And then throw in an escalating military conflict with Iran that is driving up global inflation.
And, crucially, you have the Justice Department actively prosecuting perceived political rivals.
Right, the DOJ moves.
Yeah, we're seeing unprecedented moves against figures like former FBI Director James Comey and New York Attorney General Letitia James. So, for the party currently out of power, the stakes couldn't feel more existential.
Which brings us to our mission today. We are unpacking this intense collision between a candidate's severe moral failings and a party's pursuit of raw political power.
It is a lot to unpack.
It really is. And we have a massive stack of sources today to help us understand the mechanics of this. We have local Maine reporting, deep dive exposés from the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal, plus a transcript from a conservative talk show featuring Senator Ted Cruz.
Oh, and we also have a year's worth of daily news briefings.
What?
But just a quick heads up for you listening. These sources contain highly charged partisan viewpoints from both the left and the right.
Very highly charged.
Exactly. And we are not taking sides today. We are not endorsing any of these political positions. We are strictly here to impartially examine the facts, analyze how this political machinery actually operates, and help you navigate the strategy.
So before we can understand why the Democratic Party is tearing itself apart over this candidate, we have to look at his appeal. Like, who actually votes for a populist oyster farmer?
Well, a voter base that is completely disillusioned with the polished political establishment.
Yeah.
Graham Platner is a Marine combat veteran. He served deployments in Iraq and Afghanistan.
And he literally works on the water as an oyster farmer.
Yeah, he is the ultimate political outsider.
And he ran a campaign that bypassed all the usual talking points. He spoke plainly to the working class about the crushing costs of housing and healthcare. And, it worked.
He worked incredibly well.
He didn't just win the Democratic primary. He won it in an absolute landslide, completely sidelining the party's safe candidate, Governor Janet Mills.
But here's the catch with rapid-rise populist candidates.
Mm-hmm.
Because they don't come up through the traditional party infrastructure, they often skip the grueling vetting process.
Right, the establishment ignored him.
Exactly. They didn't take him seriously until he was already winning. And the second he secured that nomination, the national spotlight hit him and the closet opened.
And what fell out wasn't just a few skeletons, it was an entire graveyard. Let's talk about how opposition research works, because you genuinely have to wonder how any campaign misses this much baggage.
Well, it usually starts with something physical, something visible, like in this case a tattoo.
Right. So back in 2007, while serving in the Marines in Croatia, Platner got a skull and crossbones tattoo on his body.
But this was not your standard pirate flag.
No, not at all. It closely resembled the Totenkopf, which is an incredibly specific emblem used by the Nazi SS.
Now, when confronted, Platner claimed ignorance. He stated he did not know its anti-Semitic meaning, he has since had it covered up, and he publicly stated his hatred for anti-Semitism.
The campaign could maybe spin that as a youthful mistake, right?
They could try. Except the people closest to you are often your biggest liabilities. His ex-girlfriend, Lyndsey Fifield, completely blew up that defense.
She really did.
Yeah, she went to reporters and explicitly stated that he used to joke about the tattoo and literally called it his Totenkopf. He knew exactly what it was.
And that revelation opened the floodgates. Because once journalists know a candidate is hiding something physical, they start digging into the digital forensics.
And his digital trail is a campaign manager's worst nightmare. We're talking about resurfaced Reddit posts stretching from 2013 all the way to 2021.
Yeah, and in these posts, Platner openly calls himself a communist. He labels rural white Americans as stupid and racist. He refers to police officers as bastards.
He also uses severe anti-LGBTQ slurs.
Right. And he even suggested that victims of sexual assault should take some responsibility for themselves.
What is crucial to understand here is the timeline. These are not the edgy posts of a teenager figuring out the internet.
No, he was between 24 and 37 years old.
Exactly. This was sustained behavior well into adulthood.
And it gets darker. It was recently discovered that he maintained an active profile on a messaging app called Kik.
Which is a huge red flag.
Yeah. For those who aren't familiar, Kik has been heavily scrutinized by law enforcement. It has literally been dubbed a predator's paradise due to its notoriety as a hotbed for child exploitation because of the intense anonymity.
Right, so you have to ask, what is a 37-year-old Senate candidate doing on an app with that reputation?
That is exactly what the party establishment is asking. But the scandal didn't stay contained to the internet.
No, it escalated to serious, real-world allegations of abuse.
The New York Times recently published accounts from his ex-girlfriends, including Lyndsey Fifield. She alleges severe physical intimidation. She detailed incidents where he grabbed her hard enough to leave visible marks.
She also said he pulled her out of a taxi by her wrist.
Yes, and during one major argument, she says he twisted her arm behind her back, shoved her into a bedroom, and physically held the door shut to trap her.
And compounding all of this, text messages were leaked to the press, revealing he sent sexually explicit messages to multiple women early in his marriage.
And his wife actually discovered these messages back in 2025.
Right. She proactively disclosed them to campaign aides because she recognized immediately that they posed a massive political risk.
Platner fiercely denies the physical abuse allegations, calling them completely false and a coordinated political hit job. But he does admit to the online posts and the infidelity.
His defense is to blame his past toxic behavior on a dark period in his life where he was struggling with undiagnosed PTSD from his military deployments. He admits he self-medicated heavily with alcohol.
Okay, let me pause you right here. Because normally if you buy a used car and the transmission drops, a tire blows, and the engine catches fire as you drive it off the lot,
You abandon the car.
you walk away. So why is the Democratic Party still sitting in the driver's seat of the Platner campaign while the flames are getting higher?
Because in this specific scenario, walking away means handing the keys to the entire Senate to the opposition.
It is a math problem.
Purely mathematical. You have to look at the national electoral map. The Democrats need to net exactly 4 seats to retake the Senate majority. That is the magic number.
And Maine is the only state in the entire country with a Republican incumbent running where Kamala Harris won 2 years ago.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it is a mathematical necessity. If they lose Maine, the math for majority simply does not work.
So what you are seeing is a brutal calculation by party leaders looking at that national pressure cooker.
Representative Seth Magaziner essentially said the quiet part out loud. He explicitly stated the party must unite behind Platner, despite this horrific history, to put guardrails on the current administration.
And let's synthesize what those guardrails are meant to do. The administration is attempting to fundamentally reshape the Federal Reserve by pressuring its chairman,
which threatens economic stability. The military is also expanding immigration detention centers.
And as we mentioned, the government just survived the longest shutdown in history. 41 days of total gridlock where SNAP benefits were severely threatened.
Right. Food assistance for 42 million Americans.
When you frame it through that lens, you start to understand the desperate logic. National Democrats are looking at a country they believe is on the brink of institutional collapse.
They feel they simply cannot afford to lose a mathematically necessary Senate seat over a single candidate's personal failings. The macro stakes are just too high.
But that utilitarian logic creates a massive fracture within the party itself. You essentially have a strategic wing and a moral wing going to war.
Totally. Look at leaders like Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer. He is firmly in the strategic camp. After meeting with Platner amidst all this scandal, Schumer flatly stated they are going to beat Susan Collins and take back the Senate.
He completely bypassed the morality of the candidate. And Senator Bernie Sanders took a similar route.
He aggressively defended Platner. When reporters directly asked Sanders about Platner's morality, Sanders used a classic political deflection. He pointed to the opposition's morality instead.
Right. He insisted the focus must remain strictly on working-class economic issues, When pushed on whether he still backed Platner, Sanders literally said, "Of course, why would I not?"
Contrast that with the defectors, because there is a very vocal contingent arguing that this strategy is incredibly short-sighted.
Representative Jake Auchincloss publicly broke with the party line. He called Platner's history personally disqualifying.
His argument is about long-term survival. He warns that ignoring this level of toxic behavior will permanently damage the Democratic Party's brand with voters.
Yeah, he argues that you do not build durable majorities by tolerating the intolerable. Senator John Fetterman also jumped in, suggesting Maine voters should completely redirect their support back to Janet Mills.
Which is a perfect pivot to how the opposition is viewing this absolute chaos.
Oh, while the Democrats are having an existential crisis, the Republicans are watching this unfold with strategic glee. We pulled insights from a conservative podcast hosted by Ben Ferguson and Senator Ted Cruz.
And they are just having a field day.
Yeah.
Cruz happily points out that the Democratic Party will seemingly tolerate absolutely anything if it means holding on to power.
He literally brands Platner a Nazi communist.
Which is quite the rhetorical oxymoron. But it highlights exactly how much ammunition Platner has handed his opponents.
But beyond the mockery, Cruz and Ferguson highlight a detail in their analysis that is easily the most fascinating aspect of this entire story.
This was the biggest revelation for me. It completely shifts the narrative. These devastating leaks, the sexing, the Reddit posts, the Kik profile, they're not coming from Republican opposition research.
No, they are coming from inside the Democratic Party.
Exactly. For example, Platner's sexually explicit text messages were leaked to the press by his own former campaign political director.
Wait, let's play this out. The party establishment originally wanted the safe, traditional candidate, Janet Mills.
Right.
But the populist base rebelled, voted in the primary, and gave the nomination to Platner. Are party insiders now weaponizing opposition research against their own primary winner to orchestrate a hostile takeover?
It is a highly credible, actively discussed theory. Senator Cruz described it on his podcast as a Democrat-on-Democrat violence effort.
Wow.
Yeah, it is a ruthless political mechanism. When the establishment cannot beat a populist insurgent fairly at the ballot box, they use media leaks to purge them.
So they feed the press these devastating, carefully timed stories to make the candidate so radioactive that they have absolutely no choice but to resign.
Precisely. But here's where the strategy gets incredibly complex. This conspiracy theory operates on a strict legal clock.
You can't just cross a name off a ballot with a pen and write in a new one. Under Maine election law, there is an ironclad deadline.
The magic date is July 13th. Under Maine law, if Graham Platner voluntarily withdraws by 5 p.m. on July 13th, the state party establishment is legally allowed to convene and handpick a replacement nominee.
Notice the word voluntarily. They cannot legally fire him. He won the primary.
Right. They have to make his political life so miserable that he signs the paperwork and steps down himself.
It is essentially a hostage negotiation playing out in the press.
And if they successfully break his campaign and force him out by the July 13th deadline, the party officials would then have exactly 14 days until 5 p.m. on July 27th to finalize their new candidate.
And who just happens to be waiting in the wings? Governor Janet Mills.
Conveniently, yes. She suspended her campaign back in April due to funding issues, but she left her name on the active ballot.
That is an incredible strategy at play. It is a high-stakes game of political chicken. The party establishment is racing against a literal calendar deadline, actively leaking toxic stories to burn down their own flawed populist.
Also, they can install their polished establishment pick before the legal clock runs out.
It perfectly encapsulates the core tension we are seeing. This situation forces an uncomfortable choice between holding the moral high ground and securing raw political power.
Do you demand absolute purity from your candidate, even if it means losing the Senate majority? Or do you prioritize the Senate majority at all costs, even if it means backing a candidate with a deeply abusive past?
Which brings this directly to you, the listener. Think about your own political boundaries. In a deeply polarized